So we now start with our second panel. I'm still with you. We have our speaker from Member States representative from the Polish Space Agency, the EU military staff, and the EU European Space Agency. So we will explore, as Emmanuel said, the capabilities, so more focus on the capabilities required to ensure long-term resilience for space. We've seen that through geointelligence, we can address many needs, ensure situational awareness on Earth from space, support decision-making on the ground in military operations, but this requires that our Earth observation space assets and infrastructure be protected, that they become, because they become a critical equipment as the data that they transport that needs to be secured according to the highest military standard. And all this requires autonomy and non-dependency on non-European capabilities, but also interoperability to be able to pool capability and share our data. So this is why, to discuss this point, that we have you on this panel today. Juliette Lambin, Head of Future Missions and Architecture Department at ESA, Earth Observation Program. Colonel Marcin Mazur, Vice President of the Polish Space Agency, and Colonel Juan Manuel Chomon Perez, Action Officer at the European Union Military Staff and Spanish Air Force. So I will start as well, like the precedent panel, with the first round of questions. So we'll have 20 minutes with 6-7 minutes each. And then we'll have a second round and involvement as well of the audience. So Juliette Lambin, ESA is working, and you talked about that as well in this morning, on the development of the European Resilience from Space program since the last ministerial in November 25, which was an important milestone for ESA and a great success. So you launched the program since the beginning of this year. So my question is that ESA is working now very closely with the member states and with SATSEN as well in gathering requirements for the service. So can you share maybe some of the main findings and the status of the program development that you are doing now at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, hard to know where to begin. The ERS, European Resilience from Space initiative from ESA was really framed as an answer to ESA member state in terms of need for resilience. It covers actually more than Earth observation, because we are trying also to work with secure connectivity and positioning, navigation, timing capacities into developing that. It is strongly linked to the European Union approach with EOGS preparation. In terms of Earth observation, the ERS program is structured in two parts. One, it is really the preparation, the element one, the preparation for EOGS. So in this one, the user requirement, the security requirement really comes from the European Union. And it was described in the previous panel by my colleague. So in this we are taking the requirement and then looking at what it means in terms of requirement for the infrastructure, the end-to-end approach. And we have a set of activity to prepare the design, the architecture, the design, but also to accelerate the capacity of Europe to develop this system with in-orbit demonstration, but also service proof of concept, where it is not directly the implementation of EOGS. EOGS will come from a European Union perspective, but we want to, jumpstart what can be done in the industry, what can be developed as key core capabilities in Europe, with in view that there is indeed, there are lots of capacities today, but there is the need to strengthen with what Milan was saying about dual use or security by design. And that requires more effort than just taking what's on the shelf. And the application proof of concept that we are working with SATSEN also is another view, is to look at more the end-to-end chain, how you would can we really demonstrate what can be done from the acquisition down to the service. And again, that is a lot. There is a lot to learn into how does it work in practice. What can we do before we run in full implementation of EOGS? The second part of ERS-EO is what we call element 2. That's not very original, but it is really to answer to ESA member state needs, and it's much more customized, and in this we have a more direct interaction with users. And this is also building on what we have done with the national program, such as Camilla or IRIDE, which are not, again, also going into this direction. What we learned there is that the needs or the requirements are really similar. They all go into, well, this end-to-end approach, really delivering the information. The notion of pooling and sharing or using what exists, so what is in the commercial domain or already at the national domain should be used before providing a brand new infrastructure, except that, again, the third requirement is the security by design, and there is some effort to do that. And the last, I would say, requirement that comes off a lot is interoperability or system of system. No system can be fully designed in isolation. You have to see the big picture. And that's a level of complexity. It requires also careful definition. What do we see? Even on the technical level, it's not a simple problem, and you add usually governance question. And so I think at this moment, we're really working towards preparing that in all those dimensions. And we recognize in many areas that standards and that already exist, such as the NATO standard, can be used and reused. So there's no need for reinventing something. But the key point is how to bring all those requirements that are very similar into something that is not too fragmented in Europe.
Thank you very much. Colonel Mazur, I think that, well, Poland is an interesting representative of member states for this panel this year because of the investment that you engage into the defense sector and space sector as well recently. So I would ask you, what is Polsa's role in the defense and security landscape in order to better understand as well the cooperation between Polsa, the agency, and the MOD, the military side? And you can as well a bit explain your background, because I think that you sit at the interface between civil and defense as well with your background. And how are you working together with the Earth observation data and service providers at national level?
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me for this discussion, especially that, as you, Sandra, mentioned, we are representing only national points of view in both those panels. But the point is really important, which you highlighted as well, is the fact that I'm still active military appointed to the civilian entity, try to merge the efforts between two different customers, because even whatever we will talk about the dual use, and we have different understanding as we heard at the previous panel, it is all about two different customers with a little bit generic, the same capabilities or similar needs, but in details some different requirements. And of course, from Polish perspective, MOD has own requirements and own resources, financial budgets to procure, to develop, to fulfill their needs. But and of course, we as an agency, we also develop own capabilities with, for instance, ESA help. As a part of our national role to develop the industry in Poland. But the thing which we want to achieve is to summarize the efforts, to merge the efforts, to build similar or comparable, interoperable ground segments, user segments to receive the effects merge, double with our support with sharing access to the data from different customers, and that's the role which we see, and that's the role also for me as a military on civilian side to be able to connect those customers together.
Thank you. Colonel Chomon Perez. In the previous panel, we heard about some of the institutional stakeholders in the EU involved in the EU defense security landscape. So can you elaborate on where the EUMS military staff fits into this? Because we have a military body, maybe our audience or some members of our audience are not familiar with your institution or part of the External Action Service, and how do you interact at the moment with the member states and their requirement with EDA that we heard before, and with the EC when it comes to Earth observation for security and defense?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me here, for giving me the opportunity to speak in the name of the UMS. It's been a pleasure. The role of the UMS is sometimes not very easy to explain for a military, because we got a double head here in the European Union, and usually for a military the hierarchy is very clear and very well defined, and we got just one boss. But the UMS has got two. We are on one side depending on the European External Action Service, and we are one body of the European External Action Service. And on the other hand, we are the main supporting body of the European Union Military Committee. The European Union Military Committee is the representation of the chiefs of defense of all the European Union member states. So the UMS has different directorates, and if we review a little bit the functions of these directorates, we can see what is our contribution in space, and more specifically into Earth observation. So we got a directorate of concepts and capabilities, where I'm coming from, and in that sense we are developing concepts, doctrine, and we can, in which we say to the member states how they have to act in the CSDP, in the Common Security and Defense Policy missions and operations. In that sense, in the 5th of March of this year, it was approved the concept for the contribution of the use of space to CSDP missions and operation. It was approved by the Military Committee, and it was noted by the European External Action Service, by the Political Security Committee, more exactly. And then we are also contributing to the capability development, and we interact in that case with the European Defence Agency that has got a very well-defined process for capability development, a concept development planning process that is very well established now, with some priority implementation and roadmaps regarding space, collaboration opportunities, and some key documents that Milan was mentioning, that they are the common staff targets and common staff requirements. So we gather and we discuss, we start these common staff targets and common staff requirements, and we provide our input from the European Union military staff. With the European External Action Service, we are also helping with the planning of the missions. That same as the European Defence Agency, they got a very well-defined process for capability development. In the European External Action Service, there is also a very well-defined process for planning and executing a mission. Everything starts with a crisis management concept at the more political level, political military framework, but then goes down to initial military directive, military strategic options, and so on. Maybe some of you are familiar with these documents, maybe some others not. But what is important is that before a mission commander arrives to the theater operations and a mission is deployed, we have already we got the need to plan in advance the capabilities that they are required, the capabilities of Earth observation, that nowadays they are key, that they are fundamental for different tasks and roles in the mission. And for that, there is a joint state of operational requirements that need to be fulfilled in the planning phases and so on. And we are contributing actively to this process. Then we are also acting, the European Union military staff is acting as for instance, last today as panelists representing or giving the military input in different initiatives of the European Union institutions, as for instance, the Space Shield, or also the STRA, the Space Threat Response Architecture, in which the Council Decision 698 is being reviewed right now. So that's our contribution globally to the European Union institutions and the role that we play inside of them.
Okay. But to clarify for our audience, we don't have at the EU level an EU military headquarters, so you are doing a bit of pooling and coordination of capability at EU level.
We got a military headquarters. The name is a little bit confusing because it's not called Operational Military Headquarters or Strategic Military Headquarters. The name is Military Planning Capability Center. It's not very big, not very big in dimension compared to the NATO headquarters. In the NATO headquarters, you can find 2,000-3,000 people if we don't take into account the military representations. In the Military Planning Capability Center, you just got around 200 persons. The staff is not so wide. And they are executing or helping to supervise the execution of the different missions and operations of the European Union. Maybe you are familiar with some of them, like Operation Sophia, Operation Atalanta, Aspides in the Red Sea, and then there are also some civilian, not civilian missions, excuse me, some missions that they are not executive, and they are like training missions, capability building missions, and so on, like European, for instance, European Union Training Mission Somalia. And inside of this MPCC, as an implementation of the concept of the contribution of the use of space to common security and defense policy missions and operations, we are going to develop in the next months a small space cell. And this space cell will help coordinating and integrating all the space capabilities or data products and services into the European Union missions and operations, because up to now, space was not yet an operational domain, and it was not integrated proactively in our missions and operations. It was more reactively, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. Juliette Lambin, so let's start our second round of questions. Juliette Lambin, ESA, so coming back on Earth EO, so it's our obsession today. So could you elaborate on you mentioned element 1, element 2, etc., what you are doing at the moment, and could you elaborate maybe on the procurement, planning activities in the next 2 years before the new MFF start and the program gets operational, hopefully, and how will you involve the private sector in the next phases in coordination with the European Commission?
Okay, yeah, that's a vast question. I have 2 hours, no? No, so yes, the ERS-EU program, so element 1 with the Commission, and I can then try to give a bit on element 2. We have already issued a series of ITTs, some are closed, to first support the EU, and a part of it is EU funded, the architecture and the performance of the EOGS system. So it's with a perimeter that is rather wide, and it's really to look at what exists, what can be pooled and shared, how will it play, work with SATSEN, how SATSEN would get that. It's building of all the other initiatives that have been around in the previous years. I mean, it's not starting from scratch, but these are 2 fundamental studies to design what could be the architecture of EOGS. And in the timing here is we expect to kick off very soon the studies. We will have also an end-to-end simulator, which is a tool to assess different scenarios, so from use case or whatever constellation can provide the data to assess what is the performance. Do we have the right latency for the usage? Do we have the measurement when we need it at the right local time and so on? So we will assess option. And really the idea is really to first look at what Europe has. How can it be technically pool and share? I'm not going to get into the governance. And then to look at what is the gap, what are we missing? Are we missing a specific local time? Are we missing night vision or other assets to do that? And how can we optimize what we already have? So that's the key role of this architecture study and simulator. Second round of ITTs that came out is for IOD IOVs, is recognizing that there is capability in the industry that needs to be demonstrated in flight before you go there. So it's to accelerate and de-risk any development of a dedicated space component or a commercial or a national one for what it concerns, but looking at the various requirements, night vision, agile tasking, agility of the acquisition of the satellite, and in particular, fast repatriation of the data to the user. So we have those IODs with really a stringent requirement that they should be demonstrated by end of 28. So again, to be ready for implementation, for further onboarding in EOGS. The last set of, we have also technology development and proof of concept, which I already mentioned. And the last set of studies or activity that will start a bit later, because we need the architecture study to have progressed, will be space segment, ground segment definition study. So phase A-B study, typically going to a level of PDR level. So again, this is making sure that any space component will be ready for implementation when we have the MFF. So that's preparing that. On element 2, the setup is a bit different because we're really adapting to what member states want. There is one component to prepare potential cluster, so meaning a small set of member states deciding to build together a capacity. We have already decided cluster to build a sovereign space component. And we have what we call the space resilience node, which is targeting downstream, preparing the data acquisition and delivery, processing and delivery to the user in the field in, again, a specific case. And these are not related to the EU, but they will certainly contribute to the capacity building across Europe. And all is done with the idea that everything should be interoperable and work on the technical aspect to make sure that this can work together when there is a full European program.
So are you confident that we can get operational by 2028?
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Mazur, so Poland is currently developing its own national constellation, and how do you see the connection between what you do at national level, other national constellations that are getting developed at the moment, Earth observation, DOGS, and the commercial actors?
Well, that's right. We are developing own capabilities on military and on civilian side, and as I mentioned before, the purpose is to try to merge the efforts to have access to a bigger number of data. It is the way to find the solution when you will get the right data at the right time, at the right place, right territory. And when we look into when we look into Ukraine and the space capabilities which are used nowadays, it is hard to distinguish which ones are dual use or not, of course, but it's the question to have all the matter to have access to the data or not. And when we look into Poland and our cooperation, and when we look into ERS, for instance, we as an agency, we are responsible for management of cooperation with ESA for our contribution and our use of the efforts which we spend. And MOG is just behind us, providing us with the requirements for those constellations. So coming back to the discussion about dual use and what it means, of course, it is a fundamental question, but the two types of customers are behind who need to receive data at proper time, at a proper terrain resolution with the proper radiometric resolution. But all in all, it's about provision of the data to the customers.
Thank you. Colonel Perez, so the last question for you on technology. What emerging technology do you believe will have the greatest impact on the future operational needs and requirements on Earth observation for defense domain? AI, cloud, quantum, what else?
Yes, well, first of all, I would like to start mentioning that Earth observation by itself, for a doctrinal point of view, is not a capability. Earth observation is a set of data, products, and services that enables capabilities or roles or tasks. And this is very important because it enables a vast quantity of tasks that they are very important, and they got a strong operational impact in our missions and operations. And among them, we got, for instance, the situational awareness, understanding the operational environment, monitoring developments. But when we talk about the space, it can be sometimes very dark, abstract, cold, and we have to bring things a little bit down to the earth and to put examples. I would like to put two examples. I've been taking part as aircraft commander in the past in Operation Sophia of the European Union and Operation Atalanta. Operation Atalanta is fighting against piracy, Somalia coast, taking off from Djibouti. And Operation Sophia, I was fighting against human trafficking. In both missions, in both operations, we had to take off, in the case of Operation Atalanta, from Sicily, and to make 2-3 hours of transit to reach to the Libyan coast. In the case of Operation Atalanta, we have to take off from Djibouti, 2-3 hours of transit to arrive to the Libyan coast. Some days there was a lot of activity, human traffic activity or piracy activity, but some others not. And at that time, we were starting to develop a coordination with the satellite center, but the revisiting times, the latency, the persistence was not good enough. So sometimes it happened that we arrived to the coast, the Libyan coast or the Somali coast, and there was not activity at all. We were burning fuel, tiring our crews. They were getting tired. We're spending the flight hours of our aircraft. And I think in that sense, the technology of our satellites needs to evolve and to allow with persistence, with responsiveness, with faster revisit times. It needs to be integrated into the decision-making processes and to help solve these situations. And that's just an example to bring it out to the air. But we got also, for instance, in the conflict of Iran, we have seen how important is early warning to destroy satellite launchers. This early warning also allows to see when there is a concentration of forces. We can have some indicators. Another of the capabilities that Earth observation allows is intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance with target acquisition, but also with battle damage assessment once that the target is being hit. It allows also for the protection of critical infrastructure, like undersea cables, ports, or space ground stations, for instance. Maritime domain awareness is also a capability enabled by Earth observation that is key because the maritime, the seas, they are an immense area that cannot be covered so easily by any other means. I mean, you can have patrol aircrafts, maritime patrol aircrafts like the one I was flying, but like I was saying before, it's a lot of flight hours, and even though you cannot cover the whole in the Pacific Ocean or Indian Ocean. So Earth observation is key in this area. Support in general to military operations in the part of planning, not only in the execution, but also in the part of planning, to decide which are going to be our airports of embarkation, debarkation, lines of supply, and so on. And then in other roles like humanitarian assistance, migration control, border surveillance, crisis response, or even meteorological inputs for our missions and operations. So the technologies that I think it will be game changers in the next years and that we need to push forward, they are mainly persistence, responsiveness, faster revisiting times, but also security. We need to protect our data products and services against cyber attacks. We need to have services that they are sustainable and they can be sustained during the next years and keep on providing services. The security of the dissemination of these images is also important. And you were talking about artificial intelligence, and I think it's important to use artificial intelligence to absorb the big amount of data and also to fuse this data with data coming from other domains, like, for instance, for unmanned systems or similar capabilities.
Thank you very much. Clear. I think that we can, before we conclude with our last question, open the floor to Slido and the audience for a couple of questions before we close. So a question for you, Colonel Mazur. What is the value of open source EO data and processing pipelines in a defense context? Can it complement national constellation data?
Happy, great question. I would say from a military point of view, the private data give additional chances to distribute the information to different customers. For instance, from Polish perspective, the immune center is able to have access to different governmental military constellation, but they are not so easy to be distributed to other customers. So when we talk about crisis management customers, when very often in different nations MODs support that kind of operations, civilian private data are very useful and they just complement the sources for different needs. That's one of the examples.
Okay, thank you. And this one may be the concept of pooling and sharing in defense clashes with the realities of national sovereignty when it comes to crisis situation. So what is the panelist point of view for you?
Thank you. I think that we got some initiatives like the COI projects of a governmental hub of imagery. I think in that sense also the Earth observation governmental system is not a pooling and sharing, but it got some slight characteristics related with pooling and sharing. Finally, maybe the Southern will be creating like a kind of a cloud for images. But I would like to say that there is a success history that is coming from the European Defence Agency, also in space, and is the SATCOM market. There is a SATCOM market, and it's some kind of pooling and sharing. There is a table with entry requirements from the clients, and then enterprises providing services. So it depends on how you define it. There are, of course, some kind of services that it will be only will be provided by national capabilities, some others by governmental capabilities, and some others by civilian capabilities. And the important is to make the difference in the request and the way in which they are shared. So, but if the hub for this pooling and sharing is well organized, the program is well defined, I think it's a good idea. It's always working for efficiency and effectiveness.
Thank you very much. So now let's come to our conclusive question and comment. The same for all of you. Looking ahead in 2 and 3 years, I would have said theoretically 5 years, but in our specific situation and geopolitical environment, I put the target to 2 and 3 years. What would you consider to be the key indicators of success for Europe's Earth observation ecosystem in strengthening security, defense, and resilience?
Okay, I can start maybe. Well, just pulling taking on this notion of pooling and sharing. I think in 2 to 3 years we will not create a whole new system. So basically that's what we have. There's a willingness from everyone to say we want to do pooling and sharing. I mean, all our member states are telling that. First, do pooling and sharing. Don't develop a new fancy constellation and so on. Yes, it's a challenge with respect to the governance and the local optimum of each entity. But let's do it. I mean, there is a technical issues to be solved, some on the ground, some on the transport layer. How do you transport the data from place to place? There is a key, I would say, bottleneck in terms of tasking the satellites, having the latency to deliver the service. But that's a bit what we are doing. And with this architecture simulator proof of concept, we will try it with what we have, and I hope by 3 years we will have part of it, maybe not all of it, but we will know where we stand and where we can go.
Thank you. To you?
Yeah, I fully agree that we need to look into the 3 to 5 years perspective. Of course, what we see, what we need from different capitals, from different customers, there is a need to have access to almost real-time data, almost, because the real is impossible. In that case, it would be maybe not required, but at least closer cooperation between nations to merge those efforts between different constellations. We have different projects which have started in recent 1 or 2 years from different perspective, using the recovery funds or part of ESA contribution. And we have also the EOGS ongoing. So there are plenty of European and national efforts to provide bigger number of satellites on orbit. So the case is to try to merge them. I understand the difficulties and the technical issues, but still it's among us nations providing the infrastructure and planning how it should look for all of us.
Thank you.
Okay, to answer to this question of what is a successful future in 5 years, I think it would be good to look back and to see how did we arrive here. And in that sense, I think that space, we can all agree that the space, when it started, it was something governmental. It was more exclusively of the military, of the governments. And now we have seen a lot of proliferation of commercial activity, commercial companies. We heard of new space and what is new space and how it's going to evolve and how can we profit of it. So I think new space is this good proliferation of commercial companies, but they need the support in general of the government, in two sense, to be profitable and to have support to survive in the commercial space ecosystem, and the other hand, to provide advantages to the military and to the governments. And for that, it's important that they are very close to the governments, thanks to associations like the one ERC that is holding this event today, getting in contact with agencies of the European Union, like the European Defence Agency, or with European Union military staff. And if that works, in the future we will see programs that are successful and then they integrate services coming from commercial companies, and that we will see that in the Earth observation governmental system, in the SPIDER project, we'll see that in the COGI project of PESCO, and in different projects. And all of them probably will share something, and is that it will be a multi-layer approach in which we got a central node of activity that is coming from the military, then a second layer of governmental activity, and a third one of commercial. But all of them, they are compatible, and that they could be integrated, and we could benefit all of them from this integration.
Thank you very much. So with this last word, I would like to thank you very much, all of you, for contributing to this conversation with all your highlights and interesting comments, and invite the audience to join me for a warm applause to all of you, and give back the